So you've been wanting to pick up some professional tools, but just can't seem to break out of that entry-level price point. Let me explain to you one way that I have found to be able to afford the things that you can't just pick up at Lowe's. I've developed a good habit recently of just hopping on my phone and scouring Facebook Marketplace. After a while of searching for, different hand tools, power tools, eventually Marketplace will start sending you new listings that involve your search history. One of the things I found not too long ago was this Dewalt DW744 table saw. It's the 10-inch table saw. It's a little dated. I believe when this saw first came out, it was right around the $500 to $600 price range. I picked it up for $100 because the gentleman thought that something had broken in it and it needed to be fixed. That fix ended up being incredibly simple. It's actually a very common issue with these. I'll show you how to fix that later on in the video. We'll go through how to adjust everything on this table saw and get it ready for the job site again. Alright, so we've got the whole thing mostly cleaned up. This was a job site saw for a handful of years. The gentleman I bought it from said that his father let it sit in his garage for a while. He had some things sitting on top of it that ended up spilling on it and creating some stains. We've got those mostly off. They're off enough that I'm okay with it. It is going to be a tool that I use for work, so it's going to take use and abuse anyways. But one of the problems that we have with this thing is you can see the blade going down. You probably can't hear it, but it makes a little bit of, I want to say, a wobbling noise, kind of a sticking as it's on its way down, and then when you go to put the blade back up, you gotta really crank on that thing. Ugh. And I know this is a fairly common problem with these Dewalt table saws. Let's flip it over and take a look at the gears, take a look at the shaft, make sure that the pin in there is seated correctly, make sure that everything's clean, and I can probably guess what's wrong with this without even looking at it. To remove this dust cover, this is for the dust collection. There's two cotter pins that we remove. this side piece comes right off. Looks like they left us a little bit of scrap wood that we can work with. And this right here is the problem with not having zero clearance on this blade. These are pieces that have fallen off throughout the years, and who knows how long this piece has been in there, just kind of tumbling around, clogging up the dust collection. Let's get this all nice and cleaned out. Just as I suspected, so this is our shaft here that you can see that runs along for our adjustment for our blade height. And this thing is just completely gunked up. I know what the problem is. So a lot of guys, when they think that they're maintaining their tools like this, they like to spray things like WD-40 into their tools. And the problem with that is not a dry lubricant. That is called a wet lubricant. It stays wet over time, it dries, and it gets kind of tacky. And all of that is going to collect all of the dust that you can see that constantly circulates through these tools. And it's going to cause buildup on your threads, on your shaft here, making it hard to turn this knob to adjust your blade height. So let's get this completely cleaned off, and I'm going to show you what to spray this with to keep it lubricated, to give proper maintenance to your tools, and to ensure that they're not going to end up with problems like this while you're on a job site or you're in the shop trying to get your work finished. Try not to get too much on this motor here. The brake clean evaporates really quickly, so as long as it's not plugged in, it shouldn't cause any kind of damage to the electronics. But I still try to keep it off. So we're just gonna really hit that gear, you know, kind of hit anything that's around, help clean everything up. Oh yeah, look at that thing turning out. Nice and easy. Now we're just going to let this dry. I'm going to give it probably about 5 to 10 minutes. It dries pretty quick. It air dries, right? But as you can see, it still does take a little bit of time. The next thing that we're going to use, I don't want to spray on here while this solvent cleaner is on it. It'll end up hindering the use of our product. So let's let this dry. We'll come back to it here in about 10 minutes. Now that all of that is nice and dry, we're going to come in with this Lockies. So this is graphite, and it's a dry lubricant. It'll keep from collecting all of this sawdust as you're using your saw, and it won't have all of this nasty buildup and gunk that we saw on here before. So we're just going to kind of lightly coat every little moving part that we've got on here. And that is going to fix all of our little squeaks and creaks. So check out, after we cleaned those gears off, got all the gears worth of gunk cleared off of them, and then re-lubricated them with a dry lubricant. This is our operation now, right? And this is what we were looking for to begin with. So that looks good. I'm happy with that. Let's check the square on this blade and make sure that we're square with our table. And when you're checking square with a table, you're not necessarily checking square from here, okay? You're checking to make sure that you're parallel with your rails. So when we raise our blade up, really what we want to check is our distance from our rail to a tooth here and our rail to a tooth on this side. Let's see if I've got something to help us out here. So what you want to do is with any kind of a square, you can use a tape measure, right? We want to measure the distance to where we're just touching this tooth here, sitting with our rail just kind of kissing this tooth on this side. Okay, and we're going to tighten that down, and then let's check the back. Yeah, we are definitely off. Hear how we're barely touching here. And on the back, we are nowhere near. Which is a simple fix. Up underneath the back side here, you'll see 2 bolts. Okay, those are your adjustment bolts for the square on your blade. You need to loosen both of those up, and then we're just going to tap to the left where we need to be and tighten them back up. So now we loosened up our adjusting screws on this side. I tapped, the whole housing, the whole frame for the blade to shift this side over to where we need it. We're going to double check. This side is right on a tooth. This side is right on a tooth. Awesome. So now that we have our blade squared, we need to check our fence. And the way that we're going to do that is by using our guide rails here and just double checking that this is setting flush, because now we know that our blade is setting parallel to our guides. So if our guides are parallel to our fence, then everything is parallel. And it feels like this one's pretty dead on already, but if it isn't, they give you instructions on this side. There's 2 screws that you're going to loosen, and it's going to allow you to move that left or right, similar to what we did with the blade. And now that we know that everything is sitting parallel, we need to check. I've got my angle zeroed out here, so we should be setting right at 90 degrees. So I'm going to come to this topmost tooth that's the furthest away, and when you look down this, remember, you want to see daylight through the crack between your square and your blade. The reason being is the carbide tips on these are actually wider than the blade itself. So when you're touching a carbide tip, what you want is to be touching that tip ever so slightly, and you want a very even, steady gap going down the length of that blade. Then you know that this blade is perfectly square. It looks like this one is already set for that, which is nice. So then we know, every increment that we make on this is going to be dead on where we need it. The last thing that we want to check is that our fence measurements are completely accurate. We want to make sure that anytime we go to make a cut and rip a board, that we can rely on the measurements here and not have to double check our blade every single time. For really fine measurements, for things that you need to get dead on, I would still suggest measuring from your fence to your blade either way. It's a good thing to just double check that distance every so often and make sure that you still have everything parallel. So to check this, we're going to bring this blade all the way over to where it's zeroed out on the fence here. We don't want to push on it, we just want it to be zeroed. We're going to go right there. My measurement is actually a hair off. Let me show you how to adjust that. Take your number 2 Phillips head screwdriver. No, that's a lie. So the screws on this are slotted to be flathead, or it has a Torx head built into it. We're going to use the flathead. We're going to loosen these screws. Somebody has really torqued this down and cracked that. But you can see this has quite a bit of adjustment in it. We're going to set it just dead on 0. And then tighten our screws back down. Only one thing left to do, that's to plug it in, turn it on, keep your fingers crossed that everything works. That seems good to me. Send a piece through here. I don't like using this on top of my work table just because of the height. I'm going to make an actual stand for it so that it sits down lower, probably even with the top of my table. But let's go ahead and just fire this guy up, make sure it cuts nice and smooth. Now, I don't like operating this on top of my workbench. My workbench sits at a 32-inch height, so this on top of it, you know, really puts it up near that face level. I do want to check and make sure that it works, so we're going to fire it up. We're going to take one cut with it, and then I'm going to build a stand for this to set on to put it down to that 32-inch height, even with my table, and I could use that as kind of an in-feed and out-feed when I need. Perfect. So as you can see, everything's nice and neat. We don't have any burn marks, so we know that it's not binding up anywhere in between the fence and the blade. Not as smooth of a cut as I would like. This is kind of a general construction blade that this gentleman had on here. I'm going to replace that with a Diablo blade. Just my preference. Diablo is made by Fruit, which I highly suggest. They're a little bit cheaper, I believe, but you get, you know, a very comparable quality in their blades. Now, with all of that out of the way, we just picked up a $500 table saw for $100, plus the little bit that you might have in, you know, your cleaners and your lubricant. Those are things that I already had in the shop, fortunately. So $100 to me, I'll take it. This is all stuff that you should be doing with a saw like this as general maintenance. You really want to take care of your tools so that your tools will take care of you. Now we know that our guides, our blade, our fence are all sitting parallel, that our blade is setting perfectly at 90 degrees when it's zeroed out. Our left to right adjustments are working correctly. We can raise and lower our blade nice and easily. And I think this table saw is ready to go. So that's all I've got for you today. One of the really cool things about Marketplace is, on top of saving money, you're also getting a lot of weird little freebies. One of the things that I got here was this adjustable dado blade. I've never used one before. I'm really curious to dive into it and see exactly how it works, and if it works. Another gamble that you unfortunately have to take when picking up used tools. But I'm going to make a video itself on this. We're going to cover how to adjust it, how to set it, how to check that everything is correct with it, and show you a few different dado cuts that you can make using something like this. If that's something that you would like to see, make sure you subscribe. Leave me a comment down below and let me know, what is your favorite dado setup? Do you like a stack? Do you like adjustable? I'm really curious to see what you guys think. You thought I forgot, didn't you? Here's your bonus tip for anybody that stayed to the end of this video. One of the great things that you can do with these table saws is making cross-cut sleds. You can make jigs to cut circles. There's all sorts of extras that you wouldn't normally expect until you're taught the knowledge. One of the cool things about having this miter gauge, as you can see, it fits perfectly into this slot, right? Well, one of the things that I see as guys are making cross-cut sleds is it can be really finicky to cut a strip of wood that just fits perfectly down into this slot. But if you have your miter gauge, you can cut that strip of wood to the exact dimensions of this bar, and they'll fit into this slot every single time. Okay, so I know I can't be the only one with this problem, right? I recently picked up this saw off Facebook Marketplace for $100. I believe originally they were around $500 to $600. The saw itself, I believe, is about 20 years old at this point. After doing a full overhaul with it, after adjusting everything, lubricating everything, cleaning the saw up, it runs like the day that it was made. But one of the problems that I was having when I got this was these tabs on the side of the fence. So I couldn't figure out why this fence wasn't locking into place. You can see when you set it down, it sets onto these little pins here. It sets flush, and then it should just snap in, right? You have to put this piece down first, and then as you bring your lever down, that tab goes into the slot and then clamps. If you found that tip useful, please subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be posting a lot more of these tool tips in the future of how to save money when you buy your tools, how to properly maintain your tools, along with a whole bunch of other tips, projects, and things that you guys are going to need to know when running your woodworking business. All right, thanks. I'll see you next time.